Vice Chair of the Housing Committee and member of the Environment Committee. And I'm going to moderate this panel and provide some introduction. So we had a forum last year, which I know some of you were at, on a broader mix of energy issues and sustainability. This year we decided to focus more on housing. But one of the comments in the feedback session we had at the end of last year's was the question of what is the city doing and where is the city at? And so we thought it important to include in the mix of presentations here some speaking directly to the City of Moose Jaw's evolving strategy. And I think you can appreciate, those of you that are involved in municipal discussions will know that cities are not the primary player in housing development. We've depended historically on support from senior governments, which has been more limited in recent years. But clearly in the development of, or transition of civic leadership, there was a pretty broad commitment in the last civic election to the priority of housing needs in the city. So in a fairly short period of time over the last couple of years, there's been a number of steps taken. And that's what we'd like to frame today. Again, we got a long ways to go, but there's clearly more happening, more initiatives being taken, attempted, broader partnerships developing across the front, and this forum has certainly generated lots of new ideas and possibilities. The challenges are great, and we're early into the process, but we'd like to frame that discussion. Part of why I'm providing some context here is we want this to be a two-way dialogue, to provide lots of time for discussion, feedback, suggestions, critique, so that we can refocus out of this discussion. So we have three people that will be presenting. And Jan mentioned that Alan Tomrat was going to present. Derek Thompson is an alternative, but I'm not sure he's arrived yet. So
unable to attend. Just got a message from him.
Okay.
Time to answer questions.
Well, that gives us more time for questions and discussions, and it's disappointing because I had a phone conversation with him, which he was very keen to be here, and I was quite keen to see him here because, as you will know, those that are following developments within the city on housing, West Park is a major development. It's a more integrated mixed housing development with projections for higher density, multiple unit housing, and a neighborhood concept that we haven't seen in recent development to that extent, and that clearly the discussions we've had in the Housing Committee and so on, that's a direction we want to go more to. So I was looking forward to that presentation. But we have made more of a connection with him, and I'm hoping that we'll have that discussion soon. And if there's questions about West Park, we'll keep track of them and advance them to him. So beginning our discussion will be a presentation by Marion Kleckner. Marion is the first and only chair of the Housing Advisory Committee to this point, and has committed much of her time beyond her work mandate to leadership in this role. So she's going to provide a bit of summary about the Housing Advisory Committee and how it's evolved and sort of contributed towards what will be presented as the housing strategy initiatives that Laurie Wilkinson will be presenting on behalf of the city administration. So without further ado, Marion Kleckner.
Thanks very much, Don. I appreciate that. Well, it's nice to see so many people still here at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. It's been a fantastic session so far. I'd like to thank all the organizers for their work. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. The Housing Advisory Committee was formalized only in February of 2010, so we do have a very short history. And we have prepared some brochures. I've circulated a few out there on the seats, and there's some at the City of Moose Jaw's table if you'd like to pick some up. And that does give a general overview of the membership and the mandate of the Housing Advisory Committee. Right now we're sitting at 21 members, so it's quite a large committee, and it ranges from city councillors to builders, members of the banking industry, real estate, non-profits, so on and so forth, health. So it's quite a broad range of participants. For the best part of our history, we've been focused on, again, which is short, we have been focused on two objectives. First, we recognized that housing was becoming scarcer and more expensive in the city, both home ownership and rental housing. Now, to begin to grapple wisely with many of the housing issues we were hearing about, we knew it was important to understand what was happening with housing in the city, what stage we are at, and how we arrived there. And that had to be based on facts. So time and money was spent on the first stage of a housing business plan strategy, which was tabled with the City Council in February of 2011. That's what it looks like. It's quite extensive. It's on the City of Moose Jaw website. There's also copies out at the City of Moose Jaw table out there. Secondly, many months were spent developing a municipal housing program in order that Moose Jaw could access provincial funds for housing. A critical achievement of the committee has been the development of the Moose Jaw Affordable Home Ownership Program and the Moose Jaw Rental Construction Incentive Program. Again, some literature has been set out in the chairs. There's more available, and it is on the City of Moose Jaw website. The AHOP provides the Affordable Home Ownership Program, provides the home buyer $10,000 to be used towards a down payment on a newly built house. The Rental Construction Incentive Program provides the developer or builder with $10,000 per door to create multi-unit rental housing. So, of course, there are criteria attached to both programs, and Lori's going to be talking more about this during her presentation. Also, the City of Moose Jaw has expanded some incentives that it had, and it's, as I said, been able to expand to encourage more home building in older neighborhoods and in the downtown core area. So these programs are now in place, but many citizens are frustrated that they are not aware of these programs. The committee is frustrated that the programs are not being accessed, and of course, so is the City of Moose Jaw. Provincial funding is only available for a limited number of years, at which times these programs will expire. So we'd all like to see as many people benefit from this provincial money as possible. We also want to see more affordable housing units in the city. This frustration tells us that communication is not at the level at which it needs to be. The committee wants to be easier for citizens to communicate with the city. The committee wants it to be easier for citizens to be able to communicate with the city on housing issues. And we understand that there needs to be improved communications at two levels. First, there needs to be greater and easier input to come in from the broader community about concerns, suggestions, and recommendations that citizens want aired and brought forward to the City of Moose Jaw. We then need to make sure that we respond back and work with that constituency in a constructive way. And that'll probably require some outreach work on the part of the committee, and that is something we'll be focused on more in the months ahead. And we believe the committee members must do a better job of making sure that discussions and decisions made around the table are then communicated to the sector that each member represents. For example, there's representatives from the real estate sector, then they can be informing their members of program details. Reps from the building sector should be bringing the information to their sector, and so on. So this really demands the development of a communication tree, I guess you would call it, if it's not already in place, by means of emails and newsletters, staff meetings, Facebook, Twitter, whatever is available. second level of communication that needs to come at the administrative level, and this would see improved communication and information sharing between the committee and city administration and city council. We must strive to improve communication between city departments as necessary. And finally, there are several city advisory committees and commissions. I think yesterday I counted 14 on the website. And some are really natural allies, and open communication lines between those committees and commissions is valuable. And so we need to know everyone is working together to the same goals. So some of the reasons we believe for the poor communication is that the Housing Committee has not developed a communication strategy to support the sharing and passing along of information. And why has this happened? Because we're pretty new at this, and we're still learning where and what the gaps are, and how to go about making those communications. The city website has been updated, and that is generally where most information can be found. And there are facts and data sheets and so on available in abundance at City Hall. But a multimedia and multi-layered approach would reach and inform a wider band of citizens, particularly those, particularly to gather information through other means. Particularly for citizens that gather through other means. They may not use the website. They might not get down to City Hall. There needs to be other ways that they can get the information. And of course, this approach would take focused personnel and money to achieve and consistently maintain. In the meantime, getting the information out is largely in the hands of well-intentioned volunteers and the tools the city has available at this time. A lot of communication can take place through networks, but there are limits. So I would say inviting input from the community and members, the best way to get in touch with the committee would be to contact one of the people listed on the brochure. And again, there's some available out in the front. There is a great potential for communication through the committee by community members at large. What do citizens feel should be city housing policy and priorities? In the role of an advisory committee, we can be a voice for citizens and stakeholders who have ideas but don't feel they have access to city council or administration. The Housing Advisory Committee can be a proactive point of contact. The committee supports sustainable housing, of course, and green technology, and needs to learn much more about that. We need to determine what role the Housing Committee can play in encouraging healthy and affordable housing going forward. What role do we play in supporting the advancement? A forum like this is a very valuable way of learning more. There was so much good information today. And we want to be able to visualize how these advancements can sustainable technology can become not exceptional, but routine in housing development right here in Moose Jaw. I know I focused a lot on the importance of communication, but we do believe that that is necessary. But I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on the committee at this time. And if not, I'll pass you over to Lori.
I'll just see if there's
Okay, thanks.
yeah, we will have time for discussion, but if there are specific questions to Marion on the committee structure or whatever, we could take a couple of those now. Otherwise, hold them for the general discussion.
Okay.
Thank you, Marion. And I might say that even though we recognize how far we have to go in a challenge to make a difference in housing in Moose Jaw, we also recognize we've come quite a way, and I would say with the exception of Saskatoon that we've drawn from in terms of a lot of their experience and strategies, we're probably as far advanced as any city in the province, and we actually have other communities asking us about what we've done to this point. Now, one of the changes, as part of the context of introducing Lori, one of the changes in terms of city administration is that where we once had separate branches of administration between the land division office, which was out of the city clerk's office, and city planning, which was part of city engineering, and so people coming and making inquiries would be going to two different sources, and sometimes that didn't operate as smoothly as it might. just because of scheduling and working through two different departments. And so one of the changes that's been made administratively is that those resources have been brought together under what's called the City Business and Development. So planning and land inquiries are out of one office, and therefore the information sharing is more organic, and I think an improvement in terms of communication and services by the city. So, and that's happened about 6 months ago, I guess, pretty recent. So Lori Wilkinson, who has been with the land administrator for some number of years, is now in more of a sharing role as a spokesperson for the planning department. And she's here today to sort of outline the program, the criteria, responses, and basically bring an update on what's happening in the city in terms of housing development. So, Lori, thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. Is that good? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. As Councillor Mitchell and Marion alluded to, our portion of the presentation will be focused on the housing programs and the strategies and initiatives undertaken by the city in its effort over the last several years to promote economic development, stimulate housing, and stimulate lot sales and subsequent housing construction. So first of all, let me get this thing straight. I'll just review with you the programs in place with the city. We have the speculative housing program. You guys hear me? It doesn't sound like.
Keep close, stay close.
Okay. The show home program, replacement infill housing incentive program, affordable home ownership program, rental and construction incentive, living over the shops or lots program, Head Start on a home, and support affordable housing projects. Speculative housing program. This particular program came into fruition in about 2000 after a number of years of pretty stagnant lot sales. The essence of this program was to provide licensed contractors with to allow them to purchase a lot with a modest down payment and the capability of owning or holding onto that lot for a number of years tax-free. The program has undergone a number of changes over the last few years. The ones listed up here being the most recent criteria. All unsold lots or all lots in the city's inventory are eligible, provided a house is constructed on the lot for resale purposes. It is available to licensed residential contractors. The building permit must be applied for within 3 months from the date of the agreement for sale, and with construction of the building being completed within 12 months of the issuance of that building permit. There is a penalty. Failing to comply with a 3-month deadline will result in the automatic termination of the agreement for sale, and failure to complete the construction of that home within 12 months will limit future access to the program. The deposit now, at one time used to be $1,000, was raised to $2,000 and is now actually 10% of the lot price when the market value of the house is anticipated to exceed $280,000. If the market value is anticipated to be less than $280,000, the deposit will be $2,000. That's, yeah. So that's, the spec housing program is probably one of our most popular and most utilized programs in the city. The show home program came into implementation the same time the spec housing program did. Essentially, it has the same criteria with a few more perks in it. I think we will, as a city administration, be reviewing that program in the next few weeks. Again, it is available to licensed contractors, and the typical show home criteria required to be open during certain times. The city will assist in advertising cost, provide a $1,000 subsidy for 3 months commencing with the opening of the show home, and there are certain finishing requirements have to be undertaken. This program hasn't been as well utilized, or rarely utilized actually, since its inception back in 2000. Not sure why, but it hasn't had the popularity. The Replacement Infill Housing Incentive Program, this was implemented back in, I think, 2003. And essentially it was put into place to have to replace homes that are in a ruinous or dilapidated state with new construction. All existing houses are required to be demolished with the construction of a new home on the lot. And it was actually just recently amended to also include modular homes and RTMs and to include semi-detached dwellings as well as single-family dwellings. The applicants are afforded a 5-year 100% tax exemption, which commences the January 1st of the year following substantial completion. Tax exemptions are available to the first owner occupant and are non-transferable. So if that owner sells his house after 3 years, the house becomes taxable. The new official community plan now allows for construction on 20-foot lots, and we are definitely seeing a lot more interest in development on those sizes of lots now. And all zoning requirements under our zoning bylaw must be met. And this program too, last year, I believe, was amended to include infill housing or vacant lots as well. The Affordable Home Ownership Program, which Marion spoke briefly to, it's a joint partnership between the City of Moose Jaw and Saskatchewan Housing Corporation. The city will contribute a $5,000 grant to be matched by the province of $5,000 to assist with down payments. This program basically is targeted to families or individuals with modest incomes. As you can see there, it's $60,000 or less. The applicants must be a first-time home buyer or haven't owned a home in 3 years previous to application date. Eligible units must be new construction or units converted from non-residential units to residential units. Applicants must be eligible for a mortgage. They must occupy the residence and comply with all the terms and conditions as outlined in the program. Again, there are sheets out on our table that have the full fact sheets. And a total of 30 units per year will be funded under that program. Applicants are responsible for all costs associated with the purchase of the home. That includes your legal fees and whatnot. And if the property is sold within the first 5 years, the grant must be repaid on a pro-rata basis. Again, this program, we've had a lot of inquiries on it, but to date we've actually only had 2 applications under the program. Rental construction incentive, again, Marion touched briefly on this one. This program was implemented essentially to assist the development of purpose-built rental units. Provides the applicant or the developer with a $10,000 grant per door. The property must consist of a minimum of 5 units, and 2/3 of those units must consist of 2 or more bedrooms. The building or property must remain as a rental unit for a minimum of 15 years, and a total of 60 units per year will be funded under this program. Again, if that property is sold within 15 years, the grant must be repaid on a pro rata basis. The LOTS program, or Living Over the Shops. This is the city will grant a 5-year 100% tax exemption to the increased assessment relating to the development of existing vacant upper floors of downtown buildings to residential accommodations. And to date, I don't believe that we've had any applications under this program. The Head Start on Home program, this program is funded by Westcap Management. They will provide builders and developers a 4% fixed rate loan to builders. The sale price of the units must be at or below MLS average sales price for the City of Moose Jaw. And the city must endorse and support the project. And to date, we have had 1 application under this program. The Support for affordable housing projects. The city will provide a 5-year 100% tax exemption on increased assessment value of property if approved. Sorry, can you read that? From under another provincial affordable housing funding program. To date, I don't think we have done that either. Saskatchewan's rental repair program, these are provincial programs. It provides financial assistance to landlords to complete repairs required to bring up their properties to a minimum health and safety standards in a form of a forgivable loan to a maximum of $6,000 per unit. I can't speak to that if that's been utilized or not. Secondary suite program provides financial assistance to eligible homeowners and rental property owners to construct or renovate a secondary suite in the form of a forgivable loan for 50% of the total construction renovation cost to a maximum of $24,000 per suite. And we've had a number of inquiries on this program, but again, I'm not sure how well it's been received. Okay, that basically wraps up the existing programs, and I'll just touch briefly on their current land activities going on in the city of Moose Jaw. The city currently only has one city development underway right now, and that is in our West Heath subdivision, which is in our southwest area of the city. It's our phase 3 of that development. It started out with 44 lots, and right now we are down to 21 lots remaining, and hopefully we will commence design and of our phase 4 pretty quickly here. The West Park Village, which was, we were hoping Derek would speak to today, but he's not here, and that is a private development, and that's the one that's located on 9th Avenue and Thatcher Drive. It's actually going to be a very nice development once completed. And Iron Bridge Estates, which is also private development, and that one, again, is along Thatcher Drive, and it's more geared to acreage type development. Future land activities in the city of Moose Jaw. The city of Moose Jaw, we hope to have a couple of new subdivisions or some activity taking place in the next year or so, but there are some conditions pending. The Ross School site is a private development that is design stage is underway, and hopefully that will commence pretty quick sometime this year. Spring Creek Estates, again, that is just kind of over by the Iron Bridge Estates, and that's a condominium development, so it's a multifamily. And Wellington Place is another private development, and it is a 14-unit development just off of Wellington Drive up in the southwest area. So that basically wraps up my presentation. So if there are any questions, ask away.
What kind of a development is going on where Ross
School?
Yes.
That's going to be a residential development.
You mean the school, not the school?
The school site or the land adjacent to the school?
Oh, both.
The school itself will be accommodating offices, I believe, and then the eastern portion of it will be residential development.
Lori, what is the lowest price of a parcel of land to be purchased in the city right now to put a house on, and the most expensive parcel of land?
For residential?
Yes.
Our cheapest would be around $66,000, and our most expensive was around $82,000. And those are both up in the West Heath subdivision. $82,000 being it's a large lot.
Right.
So basically it works up to $1,200 per front foot.
Now, is most of the infill inside the city filled up like where there was houses, or?
Yes, that is, we don't have a lot of infill lots left. I know we get people in daily asking for infill lots, and you know, we sold so many in the last few years. It's just one area that we don't have, and typically the way we get those is through tax title, and everybody seems to be paying their taxes lately, and we're not getting any.
Laurie, could you maybe just speak a little bit about phase 4 of West Heath with the smaller lots?
Yeah, phase 4 in our West Heath subdivision will consist of 86 lots. Half of those are smaller lots, about 28 feet, and the remainder of those are the larger lots, 50 feet and larger. we are currently looking at rezoning them to a different zoning to provide for a smaller front yard, which would result in a larger backyard. So that's underway, and we hope to, like I said, we hope to get that going in the near future. So there'll be a mixture of types of housing.
With the infill lots, you said are you changing some requirements in regards to multi-dwelling, like in case of duplexes?
Duplex on infill lots.
Is there any changes there? Because I applied, or I asked the city, and they said, you know, unless it's zoned in that area, duplexes, you can't do it, or is that changing? Or?
No. I guess it depends on a case-by-case basis, but typically, if you're looking at tearing a house down in the middle of a lot and putting up a duplex, it's a tough one. It's tough to rezone. I mean, that neighborhood was designed, you know, and based on capacity of our infrastructure. When you start tearing down one house and adding 4 more, I mean, it taxes the infrastructure. So our planner isn't too keen on spot zoning, so I guess it would be done on a case-by-case basis.
Maybe I can make a comment on that, about the transition stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, you raise an interesting point that we've had discussion around in terms of moving to higher density within neighborhoods that are actually in transition. And so, as Lori mentioned, that has been done through spot zoning in some cases. And so the broader issue is, in a neighborhood that's in transition, for example, between Main Street and 9th Avenue and Saskatchewan and North, where there have been some projects, a duplex and a fourplex, and there's a condominium development there on Saskatchewan, and the proposed student residence for SIAST. It's obviously an area that's in transition, and so the question of changing the zoning to higher density is really a neighborhood issue. And we've actually made a request from City Council that we set up a process to engage in that discussion about reviewing the zoning, so that we're not just dealing sort of case by case with spot zoning, but we recognize if there's support within the neighborhood that this rezoning might be more generally increased to allow for more density. South Hill, older part of South Hill is in some similar transition. So just from my perspective on City Council, I think it's something that we need to get better at in terms of engaging the public in this process of review. And so hopefully we can do that, because there's several parts of the city that are going through change, including the downtown itself. And so we need to get better at public engagement to work that process through and decide what's the appropriate zoning and whether people are prepared to support higher density and what the implications are for the infrastructure.
Yeah, because in a lot of cases, there's a lot of 25-foot lots set in between 50-foot lots, and so the density, I think at one point in time, was to be all 25, but some people bought 2 lots, you know, so probably the infrastructure is there.
Yeah. I mean, from an environmental and sustainability perspective, we need to move to higher density, but it's not always a smooth transition, and what the neighborhood has to say is important, how the infrastructure can be addressed. But in general, that's the direction, certainly in any new subdivision plans, to look at more mixed housing and generally a higher rate of density in the development plan. Any other questions? Sorry, Lori, you may not be off the hook, I don't know, I was just making a comment there. Any other questions on city programs? Or other questions related to the city's role, which is obviously new and limited, but we think important, and public input, the chances for public input like this are not always that regular. Usually it's around very specific projects and often very reactive as opposed to general discussion. So,
What's the plans for the Wild Animal Park and River Park area down in there? Like everything's being stripped out of there, and they're trying to bring all the houses out of River Park there too.
yeah, I think that's 2 different questions,
Yeah.
but related. And I could comment, I'm not sure I can answer it, but you know, the Wild Animal Park has has been kind of a protected conservation area for some period of time. It's in the advisory area, I guess, if that's the correct term, related to the Waccamaw Valley and Waccamaw Authority, but it's not directly under them. It's not a current project for development. So that's kind of an open-ended question, but I think there is certainly been a strong expression of community feeling that it should be limited in terms of the range of development there to protect the natural environment, which in terms of the ecology is somewhat sensitive. The river valley, and you're talking about the residential area in Churchill Park,
Yes.
is again under the advisory of Waccamaw, and there's been some pathway developments there, which you're probably aware of, but property owners have the option of remaining and reselling their property if they want to. There's no demand pressure in terms of utilizing that area for other recreational uses beyond the pathway development that I mentioned. So there's no current projects, and we have still the flood property acquisition program of purchasing properties that are not sold on the private market, but it's a limited resource. It's budgeted so much, I think it's $50,000 per year towards that. So there's still properties being purchased, but not at a great rate, and I think there's about 30 residents still in Churchill Park, and generally I think quite comfortable in remaining there in spite of the flood risk. Any other questions?
To do with the West Heath development, is there city stipulations as to how green it should be or anything in the environment?
Timely question. As Laurie mentioned, West Heath Phase 3 is now, that's in midstream and towards the end in terms of lots being sold. And Phase 4 is the proposal for more smaller lots, so a zoning change to incorporate that. And part of the discussion, and then there's phases 5, 6, and 7. I guess that's 7 is the physical limit. So this is a development, a subdivision development, which was really plotted out and designed, I think, in the 1970s. So in terms of green policies such as solar orientation or more of the West Park type of neighborhood development with more mixed housing, more multiple unit housing and the commercial mix, that's not in West Heath currently. And part of the discussion we had just recently at City Council is whether it's at all possible, given that these phases are going to be happening over the next 5 or 6 years, to make some changes in the design and incorporate more considerations of environment to allow for such options as passive or solar technology. And what we're hearing back, understandably, from city administration is that that plan is in place. It would be very difficult to change it and would add costs. So unless we're prepared to take that on and think creatively, some of these things won't be incorporated. I guess that's where I'd leave it, but I mean, it's very much a current discussion, so it's a relevant point. Whether you can change subdivision designs that make assumptions about infrastructure and street layout and so on that are not actually fully in place yet, but to make changes is not easy. Any other questions?
Is thermal heating limited to location or?
I don't think there's anything in zoning that's kind of an independent technology. We know that there are projects within the city like Grand Hall Hotel that renovation that is applying thermal technology, and I'm not sure that there's anything in our zoning that speaks to or restricts that. So that's an option that people can look at. It's an expensive one with long-term returns, but it's an option that's there in either existing buildings or in new construction. Any other questions?
What's the plans of the old Husky refinery area?
Well, there isn't a plan, but it's a prime. You're talking about all along 9th Avenue,
Yeah.
north of the tracks.
East and west side.
That's a 60-acre plot that the geotechnical studies are being done on in terms of determining issues of land use or environmental or contamination restrictions that might apply to part of that site. But generally it's intended for residential development, and there will be pretty large infrastructure costs to extend sewer and water systems to that area, but those plans are being developed, so it's intended for residential. But that's the next large area that's within sight of being developed. As well as smaller development on Caribou Street East, which is more for like modular units on the north side of Caribou Street East. Any other questions? Okay.
It's not a question, but I guess just a bit of a plug for one of the sessions tomorrow. There's a session on municipal financing for energy efficiency retrofits for homes. And I think it sort of relates to the discussion that we're having, because it's about how to make energy efficiency more affordable for homeowners, and how to use municipal programs to make that possible. And there are various initiatives that can be taken, and that session's going to look at 2 of them. But there are ways for municipalities to have full cost recovery on the incentive programs that they provide, that also reduce the barriers for folks that want to make energy efficiency retrofits.
In the absence, thank you. That is a related session. In the absence of Derek Thompson being here, maybe just in terms of West Park, it is quite different from West Heath in terms of the mix of development that is there within the plan. But clearly the market demand continues to be the higher end single detached houses that are being constructed in both Iron Bridge and West Park. I mean, they're larger lots, I think it's fair to say, are going first. So even though it's in the plan, I mean, part of the engagement with Derek would have been to get a sense of the timing and interest that there is in the mixed development and rental units that are part of that neighborhood plan. Because that is clearly our biggest shortfall in terms of responding to public need. We have, along with Regina, the lowest vacancy rates for apartments in the country. And for the size of our city, we have a proportionately small number of apartments, really, and we've lost quite a few in the last couple of years through property changes and demolition and fires and so on. So those projects are certainly a high priority from the advisory committee in terms of sensing public need. But in spite of the rental construction program, which, to be fair, those programs have only come into place in the last 3 or 4 months, so the uptake may still come, but there's not a lot of indication that there's developers, builders that are moving forward very quickly to provide multiple unit rental accommodation. It's still mainly focused on condominiums. So that's a clear need, and if we hear of developers in other provinces and so on, we need to kindle their interest, because there's certainly need and demand here, and we need to try and work with people that are prepared to move those projects forward.
Is Moose Jaw a little bit concerned with all the expansion going on in the industrial, like MJEAC by 2021 will be doubling their production? I heard the other day that Yara's looking at doubling their plant, and then the K+S, with not a whole lot of apartments available and residents.
Well, that relates, our housing
Yeah.
shortfall, it relates to the changing economy and the demands that are there. It's hard for
They're going to miss a lot of the
workers coming into the city around projects, especially if it's short-term, to find adequate accommodation, so. Yeah, that's a concern.
If you
Marion?
get the opportunity to look at the housing business plan, there are some out there. There's priorities are addressed. The city is definitely concerned about everything from service land to high rental rates to not enough properties. So it's a very informative document, and that's what the Housing Advisory Committee has kind of been using as a baseline as we move forward in determining what the issues are of what we need to move forward on. So and it's also on the City of Moose Jaw website. It's quite a long document, though, if you want to pick it up. It's easier to read than off the website.
And I mean, one of the potential areas for expanded residential accommodation is the downtown, including renovating existing buildings. But again, it's not cheap to do, but there are certainly architects and builders in other communities, especially larger centers, that are doing that kind of work, and it would be good to see more projects downtown. The Scott Block is currently under development with rental apartment units going in there, so there's some development, but it needs to be broadened out, and there's certainly space and properties that would be appropriate for that kind of development.
But there's a limit to height of buildings, isn't there? Like only 10 or 12 stories?
Yeah,
Compared to,
the
like,
zoning addresses height restrictions.
Yeah,
but-
well, I thought a lot had to do with fire code too.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not going to have a 60-story building on High Street in the next short while. But that's, building, doing construction that's appropriate to the zoning is not that difficult if we find investors prepared to take it on. So, thank you. Thanks to Marion and Lori. And we'll follow up with Derek when we catch him and have him here for another event, hopefully, because that is an important development. So the session tonight is at 7:30, both social and educational, and hopefully people can make it back for that. It's in here. And otherwise we will probably see you in the morning. Thanks.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our second annual conference, Forum and Fair. And this is the first time we tried an evening event. So welcome, and it's good to see such a fantastic turnout. And this year, through the help of SciAS, we're recording all the sessions. And also through the help of people that work at SciAS and their technical ability and their innovation and their drive, and with people on our committees like Christian, we're using technology here, and we're going to be streaming or placing these videos on Wiki, if I said that right, because I'm not a real techie. And so this hopefully will be used as learning tools throughout the province with other groups. I know other campuses of SciAS are interested, so it's great that you're here tonight, and welcome to our evening affair. There was some debate on it whether or not it was going to be a big affair. I thought of a jazz band, I thought of some art from school children, thought of some other types of beverages, but in the end we thought that we're trying to promote our downtown all the time, so if people want to move on later downtown, we certainly could do that. As well, we wanted to attract youth, and we did a lot of canvassing of the schools to try and get some youth out tonight. But one thing that did come of our effort this year too was to try and hold regular types of events with regarding to green and sustainable activities. So we're looking at in a couple of weeks, and Joanne is here. Joanne, did you want to briefly just tell people what we're hoping to do here in 10 days' time as a speaker? Why don't you come on up and tell everyone.
Hi, I'm from Regina. So we're hoping to, in Regina, we're having a workshop on February 25th about permaculture. It's an introduction to permaculture by Rob Avis of Verge Permaculture from Calgary. The Friday night at the Cathedral Neighborhood Center will be a free talk, and then Saturday is the workshop arrive at 8:30 for coffee, and then the workshop will go from 9 to 5. Rob's a really great speaker, and it'll be a really good interactive workshop. There's some talk afoot to have some kind of an event in Moose Jaw on the 22nd, and which is a Wednesday, and plans aren't finalized yet, but I guess stay tuned. And I'm not sure how Jan will communicate this, but I think there's a Facebook page he was talking about. And I guess there's going to be an email list from this event, so I guess people would find out that way, or just phone Jan. And also Julia Hardy is interested in helping try and set that up. So it might just be a small discussion, or Rob might give a talk, so stay posted. So I should tell you what permaculture is, and I'm just going to read this. Permaculture is about designing sustainable human settlements. It is a philosophy and approach to land use which weaves together microclimate, annual and perennial plants, animals, soils, water management, and human needs into intricately connected, productive communities. So what it is a system developed by Bill Mollison from Australia to design how food is grown and design human settlements, where your house is, your garden, and farming practices to meet the ethics of care of earth, care of people, and return of surplus. So it's a very umbrella thing, and I have information out there which you can take a further look at. So hopefully you could attend the event on the 22nd, or even make it all the way to Regina for the 24th or 25th.
Okay, so if that comes together, I think we'll test our Facebook connections here and try and do some public announcements on that. But it'll probably be Java Express or the Public Library we're looking on the 22nd. As far as the event in Regina goes, information on that can get that at?
We have a Facebook group called Permaculture Regina. You can get information on the Verge Permaculture website, and I've got a little display too.
Okay, so yeah, thank you very much, Joanne. So our first speakers that we're going to have tonight, and the purpose of tonight was really to shed some light on some of our young people that we have here in Saskatchewan, or younger people than me, and the types of things they're doing with regards to green and sustainable ways of life, and how they're walking on this earth and leading their professional lives. And I've been really impressed by people I've met last year and this year, and so I was able to recruit some local people and some guests from outside. So the first people that are coming up tonight I met last year, and I'm going to just do a brief introduction because I know that they want to talk about what they're up to. But Brooke Longpre and James Dennis live in Crono. And when they heard we were doing this event last year, I think they phoned me about it and said, hey, we heard about this event, and so it was great. So they came last year and they spoke about their activities with regards to having a solar company and what they do and the different things that they're involved with that. So without further ado, Brooke and James, come on up and welcome to our event this year.
Well, I'm Brooke, and I am the VP of Sound Solar, and it's been quite a ride for our company in the last 3 years. Solar energy in Saskatchewan is so crucial as we go forward. Saskatchewan is a resource-rich province, and that includes the capability of actually harnessing energy every day when the sun shines. And our company has not only do we essentially push renewable energy, but we also have adopted ISO 14001, which is an environmental management policy for our company. So we've developed 3 different initiatives for our company. One is conserving energy, 2 is minimizing waste from our operations, and the last one is to increase awareness for Saskatchewan. And we've done that in our, well, so far we feel we're successful in increasing the awareness of solar energy and why it's so important in Saskatchewan. We, in our 3 years, we have done numerous systems, including wind, solar, solar thermal, which includes air and water heating systems. And we've incorporated LED lighting into our product base as well. James, my partner, is really a driver for us. He is just incredibly knowledgeable. He's gone to Ontario and experienced renewable energy courses there, and of course their system in Ontario is just amazing and so advanced when you compare it to Saskatchewan. So just to talk a little bit about the incentive programs here for people wishing to take advantage or use solar energy, whether it be residential or commercial. Right now, Saskatchewan government has basically stopped all funding for people to take advantage. At the time being anyway, the future in the state is really kind of unknown as we go forward. So it's really crucial that people here who are concerned about climate change and are willing to contact the local MPs and really fill your voice on whether it's solar or renewables in general. It's so critically important as we go forward. A little bit about myself. I have been probably about 12 years now in the financial industry, and I basically do all of the marketing and advertising, things like that for our company, and manage James as best as I can. But we bring a few things today, and I'll let James chat a little bit more. And if anybody has any questions, certainly just feel free. It's pretty casual, not very many people, so feel free to ask anything. So.
Well, I'm James Dennis. I'm a renewable energy technician, a design and installer. I went to Ontario to College of Renewable Energy to get my certificates. While I was there, I took advantage of their feed-in tariff, and that's how we got our big start, was able to get in and help push it there, where they're getting paid so much to produce power, which is something that I feel our province needs since we have the vast resource of sun and wind. I brought along today 2 types of panels just to show people. One's a photovoltaic for producing energy, and the other one's a solar thermal for producing hot water for domestic water or for heating. There's also another solar thermal, which is hot air. And it works similar to this one, except it just recycles your air through your home, heats it up by the sun, producing about 10,000 BTUs. So they're quite efficient. And most people ask, what can we do to start? I always say the biggest thing is your lighting and becoming aware of your consumption. The more you can lower your consumption, the easier it is to use an expensive product like this to start bringing your production down to zero from coal base. Another major thing is when we go to a site is doing a proper assessments. So by using a solar pathfinder, you're able to tell actual shading. Instead of me just coming to your house saying, these panels will produce this much, this will give you an accurate number within about 50 kilowatt hours of what you'll produce in a year because of actual shading on your site. So that way it's more of an educated number that you're getting than me just pulling one out of thin air. Or, doing the math from the statistics that they got for our sunlight hours. It's really important what we start to do for our environment, because if we don't start doing things, we're going to lose. And the more people that come to our province, the more we're going to have to, the government's going to push for nuclear and things like that. So if we can start building every home with a little bit of renewables, doesn't have to be lots, it'll start to produce enough where we may not have to upgrade our grid for a while. Because once we start upgrading that grid, that's when our power rates are going to start doubling faster than we can think. If you look at SAS Power right now, 8% a year over 9 years, our power rates are going to be double. So if you can start locking in and harnessing the sun to power your homes now, the better off and the quicker your payback will be. Just like when you're building a home. In 25 years, whatever it costs you to build that home, multiply it by 3. And that's what it'll cost you to heat and power that home. So initially, if you were to spend, say, an extra $50,000 to $100,000 and bring that to zero and have a net zero home for the next 40 years, your house is not going to cost you much more than it did in the beginning, except for taxes and all the other jazz that the government gets anyway. So, really awareness is the biggest thing. And it starts with us and our children. We have to start putting it into their lives. Schools need to start teaching it a lot more, to start educating them to understand that right now we're a very wasteful people. We walk in, flip on a light, and don't even care, walk away and leave it. Or let your car run for 20 minutes just because you don't want to get a little chill on when you get out there. We got to really start being aware of the things we're doing to help our future generations. And that's about all I have to say. So, Brooke.
Does anybody have any questions?
My brother and I run through the scenarios of power in the world every now and then, and his point the other day was that a lot of the stuff that it takes to make solar panels is mined in poor countries that don't follow necessarily the ethics of not polluting the world as they mine that. Is that is there some basis of that?
Well, it depends what you're buying, right? I got to watch how I say this. It depends what products you're buying and where they're from. A lot of the companies are starting to take in the ISO 14001, which is an environmental side of it, and they're a lot more aware of what they're doing. But then, yes, just like anything else out there, there are the companies that are going to cut corners to save themselves that buck just to produce something. And you really got to watch.
What actually is the base minerals that are in like a panel that you're buying?
It's a crystalline cell. They're either pressed. This is a monocrystalline. These are grown from an ingot. And you can always tell a monocrystalline by the way the corners are. A polycrystalline is pressed, so they're a totally square cell. They're the mid-efficient. These are the most efficient cells out there, and these are growing from polycrystalline cells. So they're growing from an ingot, and they pull them up into a circular, then they cut them square. And so if you ever see a panel where it's either a diamond shaped or it's got this white in between, you always know it's a monocrystalline. It's the more efficient panel. But they're growing. Yeah, there is a bit, but these will last. You've got warranty for 25 years. They're running in the Arctic. They've been there for over 40 years, and they're still producing 80% of the power as brand new. So when you're buying these, yeah, it's a little bit of an, but you think of what we're doing to ourselves by this coal that we're burning all the time. This is minimal. And they last for a long time. They'll take a golf ball size hail at 50 mile an hour. They're a durable panel, and with solar versus wind, there's no maintenance. This here, you put it up, you may have to clean it once in a while, but you're not maintaining it. You're not out there, at least with a wind turbine, your wind turbine's down 10% minimal a year for maintenance. So these here, you put them up, you forget about them. The more you clean them, the more you'll produce. So it just depends how much you want to harvest off that system. But other than that, this is the way to go for PV. Solar thermal is just a little bit of a cheaper way to go. It's more entry level. But 2 panels will do all your domestic hot water for a family of 3, no problem.
You don't have a 13-year-old daughter.
The more you run a solar thermal panel, the quicker your payback is, because the more you can cycle that water through there, the more it'll pay back because the less you're using. So all day, that's why you'll see a lot of more industrial commercial places, apartment buildings, car washes. In Ontario, most car washes have these because the quicker they can pump that water through, the quicker this will pay back. So.
And getting back just quickly to the question about the products itself and how they're done. A lot of our products in particular come either from Ontario, well, mostly Ontario, and they do contain Ontario 80% or 60% content. So it's local products. So you're not going to China for if there is any warranty issues. You're doing it right in Canada, supporting Canadian companies. And there's some really, really great Canadian manufacturers out there who are just doing a fantastic job.
So when you're doing an evaluation of like you go visit a home, and you're talking about consumption, you hear lots now about LED lights and still lots of appliances and stuff like that. So are you encouraging people to then take the investment of making those changes first before like really getting that solar, because you might end up oversubscribing to what you need, right?
Right now we're working with a welding and machine shop in Regina, and we're switching out all their lighting to an LED prior to them having an assessment for the solar, because we're switching out 93 lights. It's saving them $2,500 a month, going from a 250 watt and 400 watt ballast down to a 70 or 40 watt. So they're saving huge on their consumption, and it's paying back within 1 year. So,
But yes, it is important that people become aware of what you're consuming. If you're spending, thousands of dollars on this technology, for you to be aware of your monthly consumption is absolutely critical. I mean, you can save yourself a couple grand if you are able to even reduce your kilowatt hours by 15% a month. And that is a piddly if you had, changed out 10 lights or, there's so many things that you can do.
Well, and there's other things, like if you're running inductive loads, motors, compressors, anything like that, cleaning up that AC sine wave, so you're pulling it tighter together, so you're using it more efficiently, so you're cutting your amperage in half, which is technically using half the power to produce the same watts and volts. It's, there's lots of little things you can do to get in there to start making your home so much more efficient. We have a 1,100 square foot home, and we use a year around 4,000 kilowatt hours a year. We have 2 kids, us, it's just becoming aware and switching out and making that shift. It's a lifestyle. And it's a shift that you have to do slowly. Like I say to people there, wow, LED bulbs are expensive. They are. But if you do one a week or a couple a month, after a while you'll start to see, and the savings are so much more tremendous. A 7 watt bulb, switching out from a 60, that's a big savings.
And that's immediate savings.
Yeah.
Heard much about trouble with LED due to vibration of kids playing on the floors. Have you heard anything about that?
Mm-hmm.
You talked about solar water heating, domestic heating. So just kind of how much does that cost for someone to do something like that, roughly? Like what are...
To start with a 2-panel system, 300-liter tank, you're looking at about $9,000 to $10,000 to start, and that's payback within, depending on how much you use it. You got a few daughters and stuff and kids that are showering 3 times a day, it'll speed that up a bit. You're looking at about a 5 to 7 year payback on a solar thermal system. And the more you can use it. We're doing a house for a gentleman in the city right now. To bring his natural gas in was $35,000 to his cabin. We solar thermaled it for 30 grand, and now he has no bill. He heats his whole house. All we did was a calculation. We put enough storage tanks in, plus we used his concrete basement as a big battery for heat. You pour your slab right, you insulate it properly. He can go 4 days, and that heat slab will keep most of his house warm, let alone his storage that he has for everything else. So you look at things like that when you got to bring it in and it's going to cost you that much money when you can spend around the same amount and have no bills after. I don't know, to me, it's not a real hard decision, but some people have a hard one with that, 'cause it's that initial money. And what if something happens where I got a cloudy week or, those are things where you have a small backup. And it's not much to operate that if you're going to use it for 5 times over the winter or so.
That's what I was wondering. So when if you did a domestic home with a couple panels and a tank, there's a backup of some sort of thing?
What you'd do is you'd have a heat on demand. So basically when your water temperature drops, that just kicks in and tops it up for that period. So it's just like a little mini boiler right there.
And you find this is able to keep up in the wintertime?
Oh, yeah.
The system in our
Yep.
climate?
You got to size it right for the home and what they're doing.
How many panels would it take to do that? Like how many panels did you use on this fellow's house?
This guy's house, we use 15.
Okay.
15 solar
15
thermal.
this size here?
No. This is just a demonstration. They're about 4 feet by 6.5 feet.
Oh, okay.
So, but when he's coming out at the end of his string of panels, he's pushing 120 degrees. Just by the way we set them up in a series to heat it up, and then you just play with your pumps. So, in the summer you're going to have it run a little quicker. Plus in the summer we're going to dump. We got 5 that'll heat his hot water. The other 10 will heat his swimming pool. So he'll dump it where in the summer he's using it to heat his pool instead of running off gas or electricity. And in the winter it heats his whole home. Plus through that concrete slab, what he does is reverses it, puts water through, preheats all his water, and then puts it into his tanks too. Because then you're pulling all the heat out through the concrete.
Yeah, I've been involved in projects where we put, these panels, the big panels on the houses, but we've never installed 15 of them. There's always been like 2,
3, 6, yeah.
And the people who were designing them said, yeah, that should be adequate to heat, what you have.
See, you got to do a major BTU calculation and figure out how efficient that home is, and then you got to find out what they want to keep that heat at, and then you have to figure out, well, how many days of storage would you need, and that's where your hot water tanks come into a big effect, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So, and then we also, for his system, he has heat on demand, but we also hooked it up to his fireplace.
Oh, okay.
So if he wanted, he could start a fire instead of running the electric.
Oh, okay.
So that way he's using it for heating his house plus his hot water.
Yeah.
Any other questions for them?
Just one quick one. Wondering if you could speak to the economics of, you mentioned wind power versus solar power, kind of which makes sense.
You know what?
In our country, or?
To me, you need to have an efficient system. It has to be a hybrid system. You cannot have one or the other. If you want to have an efficient system and talk efficiency, it has to be hybrid. Because we do have a lot of sun in the summer, but in the winter we have the densest wind. So, to have a mixture of it, because at night you'll have a bit of wind, so when your panels aren't operating, you'll have something trickling into your grid. Same within the winter, you have a strong, dense wind, you may as well harness it. Your panels will actually work more efficiently in the winter, so sometimes on a winter day, your panels will produce more on that winter day than they will a hot summer day. It's sunnier than you can't believe, because the more they heat up, the more the efficiency drops. So when you run them cool, that's why when you're sizing your DC for your close to 600 volt DC, you have to really watch, because you have to figure out your coldest day, how you're setting them up, and then times them by your factor. Because if you have it sit at 450 volt DC and you drop to a minus 55 day, you've spiked over 600 volt, which will wreck your inverter, can cause problems to the grid, and that's where SAS power gets really sticky. So.
But in terms of large-scale wind, like the wind turbines and wind farms that we see in Saskatchewan, those essentially are rated the cheapest per watt. But we're talking renewable energy in Saskatchewan is it's not new, but it is new in the sense that, you don't have long-term numbers. All the systems in Saskatchewan are, probably not even 10 years old. And you don't have a long-term, research and development. Those numbers are still yet to come in to really see an accurate. But as it stands right now, large-scale wind is the cheapest per watt, then solar, then small-scale wind. So small-scale wind really, at this point, is the highest per watt.
Mm-hmm. Have you done any micro hydro?
Not here.
No. Not here.
When I was in school, we did. When I was up in college, we did some there for the government, but not here.
Okay.
I want to.
Yeah.
Been looking into it lots, but just haven't had the bites here yet.
I know you guys are, go ahead.
Sorry, one more question there.
It's kind of not a question.
Oh.
I lived off-grid at the Craigieco Village, and the only thing I found, a lot of the people who are going with the wind are actually switching over. Like, I started solar and loved it.
Yeah.
And what I found is the whole debate, everyone always says, well, what do you do on a cloudy day? Well, what you do is when it's sunny out, do all your laundry, let your kids play as many video games as possible.
That's right.
And anything else that requires, like, cook. Like, you cook like a restaurant in your house. Cook extra ahead, and then on a cold, nasty day where you don't have a lot of power, you just reheat what you had before.
And prime example of it being a lifestyle and the need to transition Saskatchewan people to a lifestyle like that.
The wind, everyone looks at the wind and goes, and especially at Craig, like it's so windy there, everyone was wind, wind, wind. Well, a lot of people are now installing solar panels because the wind, like unless you really know what you're doing, and I read books,
That's right.
and I thought I was really smart, and I thought I could build my own wind turbines. Not even excited about the idea anymore. I would never go wind.
See, with wind,
I'd go solar.
well, that's the thing with wind. It's only really productive 40% of the time because it's either not enough wind or it's too much wind and you're braking all the
I
time.
know, and you got to be able to fix them. Like
Exactly.
It's like you see hippies and the internet that have built their wind turbines out of VW engines and stuff. Super cool, but where do you find the parts? If
Make 'em.
2012 happens this year and there's no parts for it, whereas the solar, even if something goes wrong, it's easier to splice back together.
And just one more thing about lifestyle. I mean, that's an extreme case where you're off the grid versus having the option of still being on and connected to the grid, but utilizing what you have in roof space or ground space, those types of things. So, you know, I mean, to go off grid, I'd love to be off grid. I don't know if I could do
But
it.
for the off-gridders, the windmills are proving hard a lot of times.
Yeah.
Well, you have to have a good location where it's not too windy and just enough, right? We've put them up all over, and some of them don't run very good because it's too windy and they're always running, or the brakes are always on, you know, so that's a problem. And then you get into a next place, well, now you got the shelter belt. So now you're dealing with that because we didn't want wind blowing through our yards years ago, so you built all these trees to hoard it in, now you're dealing with that for turbulence, which is causing extra maintenance on your wind turbine. But
What about solar thermal? In terms of products, are you seeing a lot more demand for solar thermal, like you look at the different things that are out there?
It's cheaper.
It's cheaper.
I mean, it's really, you know, like solar air would be kind of your
entry level.
Your entry level, then solar heating with water, you know, hot water heating, and then PV would be, you know, the example of the big investment, or wind.
Just by opening your drapes, you can get into solar.
That's
thermal.
right.
It's that easy.
You know, and you can use it, I mean, we have it up on, we have panels up on the wall as art, too, so you kind of walk in and, so it's, I mean, it's versatile, right?
I remember last year when I met you guys, you were big on education, and where did you go to college in Ontario? Just tell people.
I went to the College of Renewable Energy in Newcastle. It's basically one of the founders of wind. They've been teaching for over 60 years. My professor actually in the 60s went to jail because he turned his meter backwards in Ontario, and that was a big no-no. So that was quite interesting to hear, you know, but he's been doing it forever. He's worked on projects all over the world. He worked for Vestas and all them. Like, it was quite interesting working with these professors.
But we offered numerous courses actually, but it was a lot of work, and, you know.
Not too much interest.
I mean,
I was just
it
gonna
just
ask you,
didn't appeal to
where are we at in
everybody.
the province with interest from young people to be solar installers, and
It's
is it hard
It's
to
growing.
attract?
It's growing. I mean, you know, we can, you know, everybody who's wanting us to come out and do an assessment or interested in solar, it seems like, you know, somehow it kind of turns into like, well, how can we help? How can we, you know, can we sell for you? What can we do? And I mean, definitely interest is growing, and it's growing quite fast. And I mean, still the jobs available because of our vast amount of land space and, you know, roof space. I mean, the potential is still there, and I think it'll be probably another 5-year process before we transition where there's, you know, significant amount of jobs open up.
who knows though, we'll see if, you know, we have a new incentive program come along that's going to, you know, boast you know, the people of Saskatchewan to actually take advantage, then it'll be quicker. So.
Okay, well, I'm MC and photographer.
So thanks you, thanks for.
So is Marcy. And I just want to say, because I didn't say it today, but thank you very much to the AV department here. Marcy, I was saying I'm the photographer, but she's been taking pictures all day. And Gordon at the back there has been also on the cameras all day. So a round of applause for SciAst AV. So thank you very much, and you're in the program. Thanks for being a sponsor, and they can get they can Google Sound Solar.
You betcha.
You bet, these days. Okay, to find you. Okay, our next person that we're going to have up here speaking is Sarah McRaven, and Sarah I just met today after having some dialogue on email, and today her and Eric, one of our other speakers tonight as well, went to Riverview. We did some student outreach. That was another thing we tried to do this year, was not only engage the SciAst body with regards to getting students and staff out here, but we also made extra efforts to use our contacts with the Holy Trinity School Division and the Public School Division of Prairie South. Interesting enough, most responses for requests, I shouldn't say most, but the majority had 3 requests, and 2 of them are from out of town. So we're hoping that we can maybe extend some extension out to those communities of Caronport and Chaplin, if you're interested. But the place that they did go was Riverview Collegiate, and Sarah was one of the speakers today, and she's with a company called Beetle Green, and she's going to tell you about what she's up to these days. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. All sorts of pillars and things to gauntlet to get up to the front. Hi everyone, my name is Sarah McRaven, and as Jan said, excuse me, I am with Beetle Green, and Beetle Green is about consulting and education around green buildings and sustainable buildings. And what I was trying to think about what sort of got me into green buildings and sustainable buildings, having worked with these kids today. Eric and I went and had a really great time presenting to them and letting them ask their questions and getting their thoughts as well. And realizing that my door into green building had nothing to do with green building at all. It was a love of nature and the environment, and loving animals as a kid, and camping in the outdoors and that sort of stuff, and loving people, loving spending time with people, interacting and that sort of thing, and didn't necessarily see the connection when I was younger, and sort of saw them as 2 separate passions. And as I got further down, I realized that sustainable communities, they mesh perfectly. So green buildings and sustainable communities, that's really my passion, is making buildings better places for people. So I like to say people, now I can't say it, people, planet, profit. So the idea that you've got those 3 factors. You've got the people, the social aspects, you've got the economic aspects, and you've got the environmental aspects. But people, planet, it's a tongue twister. People, planet, pocket is nice because it puts the people first. And that's the reason we build buildings, is for the people. And I think something that James and Raylyn were mentioning was, where I guess what I got out of it was sort of the need for customization, the need for working one-on-one with people where they're at. If they're in a site where wind is feasible and wind is going to be a good option, then looking at wind. But even if they're really excited about wind, if it's not a feasible solution, if it's not a good option, it makes sense to go with something better. I work with a lot of people who will come and say they really want to divert from the landfill. So they want to use recycled rubber flooring for their entire house. And then I find out through asking questions that they've got a young infant that climbs around on the floor, right? And so it's really a matter of finding out what people's priorities are and what their lifestyle is and how you can help them be more sustainable for their lifestyle. It doesn't make sense for somebody to bring in recycled rubber tire floors, which is great to divert from the landfill, but if it's going to be off-gassing for young kids, you need to know their life. So let's see. The kind of work that I do is education and consulting, helping people build greener buildings, design greener buildings,
renovate, retrofit, operate, and occasionally I get to do some work with deconstruction as well. So anything throughout the life cycle. I have a couple certifications in different programs that I work with. LEAF is a green certification for restaurants. LEED is a certification program for buildings. And the one that I sort of, as I'm here today, I'm offering as a solution, I guess, is the Sustainable Building Advisor Program. The Sustainable Building Advisor Program, it's a 9-month certification program that enables building professionals or anyone interested in learning more about sustainability to get more exposure, to learn about sustainability bigger picture. 9 months, it's 2 days a month, and the idea is that we bring all sorts of local experts. They come in and they get to present regional issues. They get to present case studies of buildings that are happening. You know, successes that we've had locally and that sort of thing. And also getting to go on tours and getting to see examples of green buildings and go behind the scenes and ask questions about what works, what doesn't work. You know, something may have been a huge success over on the West Coast, but as soon as you bring it to the prairies, it's a different situation. So again, it's that customization and knowing what people need, you know, to fit to their life. So if anybody would like any information about the Sustainable Building Advisor Program, I've got some more information outside in the fair. But that was a bit of a whirlwind. I don't know if you guys have any questions. I'd be happy to answer some, but that's a little bit about what I do. That's a lot of information. Joanne.
Do you know, I'm a plant here. I took the Sustainable Building Advisor course last year. It was really good. And I'm just been asked by a few people when you'd be offering it again.
The Regina course will be starting in September, and the Saskatoon course will be starting in October. So the course is 9 months, 2 days a month. So Regina, it'll be September to May, and then September 2012 to May 2013, and then October to June 2013 will be Saskatoon.
How much is the course?
The course is $2,500 for early registration, and it's actually a certification course. So there's a lot of learning and material that you cover through the course, and at the end of the course there's an exam. And if you write and pass the exam, then you get a designation, so you become a certified sustainable building advisor. So it's really nice. You know, the course gives you fantastic background and big picture and lots of, you know, gives you the big picture, but also gives you all the little details and the behind the scenes and experiences that other people have been able to collect. But it also gives you that designation, which is really nice, because as much as I hate to admit it, the world needs, you know, a lot of people look to certifications and designations and that sort of things these days, just to know how to better understand what information's out there. If that makes sense.
Have you seen, with the so-called downturn in the economy, have you seen kind of a dip in interest in green and sustainable living due to that? Like, are people telling you I can't afford to do change right now in my home or my lifestyle because, you know, the economy's not good, I don't have extra money? Like, did you see that when the economy was doing well and nationally, that people had disposable income to put into being green?
A little bit. Depending on the, I'm sure you guys have all seen this, right? Depending on the sort of the audience, I find for my observations, what I've noticed is that if people are interested in the toys and the gadgets, that's those sort of desires tend to fade a little bit when tough economic times are here. But I think if your values, you know, if health or the environment or financial situation is a bit different, but if those things are important to you anyways, then usually there's still, I find that there's no change. I find people are still, they're still spending whatever money they need to get certified, to get their buildings certified, to get, you know, remove toxins from the buildings and that sort of thing, because it's a real priority. Another sort of catchphrase I really like is insulate, update, and generate. And the idea with that is that it's sort of like the 3 R's when you're recycling. You know, the 3 R's, they go in order. So there's reduce, reuse, recycle. And with insulate, the idea is you insulate first. You first prevent, for example, in a house, you prevent the heat from escaping from the building. And then you update. So for example, you update your appliances and you switch to more energy efficient appliances. And then you get to generate, and you know, power generation and the toys and the gadgets and that sort of thing, excuse me. So as James and Raylene were saying, you know, you really need to know where you're starting from. And if you're genuinely in a place of wanting to reduce, then you're going to start by reducing your consumption and, you know, insulating and updating first before you get to the toys. But if you're just there for the toys, that's definitely something that's dropped off with the change in the economic situation. It's something that I've noticed. A lot less, you know, recycled countertops and fancy floors and carpets and that sort of thing.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, thank you very much, Sarah.
Absolutely, thank you guys.
Okay. I'm going to call up now Troy and Raylene Tilbury. And I met them last year at this event, and I think met them just shortly before that for the first time. But I know they're going to talk about what they're up to and maybe how they got here. But I know they are from Alberta, is my understanding, right? Oh, just her? Okay. You're from?
I'm from Moose Jaw.
Moose Jaw, okay, all right. Well, there's one import and one export here. So come on up, and it's great to have you here.
I think we'll just talk. I don't think we need microphones.
Okay.
Hold them. Like you can take them off.
I think we'll each have one of these anyways.
Is it welcome to take them and just hold them in your hand if you want?
Yeah,
It's not that many. Okay. No, this is the clicker. So you're gonna click.
I guess first off, we'll say that we're not going to come up here and say that, you know, we're the greenest people. That, you know, we try hard, but I can almost guarantee that I can guarantee that there are people in this room living greener than we are. So when Jan first asked us to come in and talk a little bit about what we're doing to live green and how we encourage green, we were like, all right, well, let's see what we can put together. I mean, we certainly have lots of improvements, so I don't want anyone to think that we're standing up here saying that we're, you know, experts on living green, because we're certainly not. But we like to think that we've made some steps and that, you know, we live as consciously as we can. So we didn't quite know what the audience was going to be tonight, so we kind of put together a bit of a slideshow that actually kind of shows the series of events that led us to Moose Jaw. So
Troy's from here, but he left when he was 6. His dad was with the railway, so not by choice. He just had to go and
I had a circle tour of the country, and then I guess we can start in 2003. Raylene and I both ended up in Calgary, and we started the architectural technology program at SAIT together, and we were classmates, and you know got to know each other through some social occasions, and would bump into each other on the C train once in a while. Probably wasn't until the end of the first semester that we really started kind of getting to know one another, and then I asked Raylene to go to a movie one night, and
very romantic.
Very romantic first date. Went to dinner and a movie, and after that we started dating, and after we graduated from SAIT, I started working with a company called Emercor, and Raylene started working at SAIT in the planning and design department. My brother and I built a house in suburban Calgary. So Raylene moved in, so the three of us lived in this house. And it wasn't until, so that was around 2006. 2007, I guess, is when Raylene and I decided to come to Moose Jaw to celebrate Valentine's Day. And Raylene also owns this piece of property just outside Carlisle. Now you can explain what this is.
This is our family's homestead. My my grandpa was born in this house, my great-grandparents built it. So it's a little piece of history for the family that has been vacant, fallen into disrepair, and was sold out of the family. And my dream is to turn it into our cabin on the prairie that we can go to. So
Sexy roof.
as for now, the roof was updated, and the rest, the inside's been a work in progress, trying to clean out all the.
We're negotiating some land
Yeah.
right now, so it's
a bit of a process, and I think we've kicked all the mice out of the home now, so we're working on making it ours, but it's going to be a process there.
So we were coming out to Moose Jaw to celebrate Valentine's Day, so that was about 5 years ago. We were coming to visit Raylan's
Check on the
farmhouse,
house,
see how
usually
things were.
every few months.
And that weekend, Raylan came home with an extra piece of jewelry. So that weekend, though, we were in Moose Jaw and walking around, and we came across this building, and we thought it's kind of a neat looking building right on Main Street. So we thought, hey, well, we've got time to kill. We'll phone a real estate agent. So we phoned him up, and he showed us around. And what he showed us on the main floor was this, that it used to be an old pet store. And, we're looking at, it's a lot of work, but we look up through the ceiling tiles and we can see some of the original tin ceiling up there. We're thinking,
This place might have some potential,
And then we're looking around, and there's some plaster chipping off the walls, but there's a bit of brick exposed. So we're thinking, well, it might have some potential.
This could be fun. It's a long way away, and we weren't sure if we were ready for it, but it was definitely getting us interested.
Went upstairs, and the upstairs had been vacant for probably at least 60 years or so.
I think since the 60s, we figure it's been vacant upstairs, just
They had
storage
really
and
just storage. There was
that's about
all
it.
sorts of crap. I mean, just stuff all over the place. Some nice window blinds and stuff like that there. But at that point, we were like, to take on a project like this when we're leaving town,
8 hours
it would
from
be
home. Where we
and we didn't have financial means. But a few months later, we're talking to Raylan's dad, who has a few properties that he likes to renovate and dabble in this kind of stuff. And he said, hey, if you're looking for partners, why don't you partner with them? We'll partner with you. So we said, great. We phoned up, building was sold. Okay, well, I guess, we'll keep an eye on things. And it was probably later on this summer. Raylan was taking a trip down back to Carlisle to visit some family. And
I was about an hour and a half past Moose Jaw, and Troy calls and says, it's on again. It's on MLS. You got to go back. I'm going, what?
so that was the beginning of the August long weekend?
July long weekend.
July long weekend.
So,
By the end of July long weekend, we owned the building. So I think it was around mid-August that we
finally
got
took
in there,
possession and our work began.
started demolishing. Now, once again, I'd love to say we're the greenest people in the world. This place came with
52 fish tanks.
52 fish tanks. Okay?
Interconnected, plumbed in with the water, the lights, so holes in the sides of all the tanks. I think there were maybe 4 that didn't have holes, but really, a fish tank with a hole in the side on its own doesn't do anyone much good, so.
It might have been mineral water.
Who knows?
I mean, at that time, we tried actually, I put an ad in Discover Moose Jaw. I called a few people, said, hey, we've got these fish tanks, no bites, no one will take it. So unfortunately, they went in the dumpster, but I'll tell you one thing, that was very therapeutic.
we had at first, we took each one out individually and we stacked it. We took all the rocks out, got rid of that. So we had all these tanks stashed, and when we realized we couldn't have them, then that was like, okay, time to take the frustration out on the project. So we smashed them. We got out there and
So we got in there, we started demolishing things. There's Raylan ripping the floor apart. So there was quite a bit of moisture damage due to the fish tanks, and the ceiling was pretty rusted up and stuff like that. But we cleaned it up the best we could. We chipped all the plaster off the walls to expose the old brick.
By hand.
By hand. So we cleared the walls. We had a suspended ceiling in there, and there was a little bit of debate whether it's going to stay. In the end, it went. On the front, uncovered some windows, which at one point must have led out to the front, which is now an awning. It's all been covered up, but eventually we'd like to restore the building,
Restore the facade
back to the original.
The pictures in here is kind of interesting. One day, because we were stripping the plaster off, and there was one wall, and it's the stairwell to the upstairs. shares a wall with this interior retail space, and it's plaster and lathe, and some parts had press board on them. They were just, it was a real mishmash. And so Troy and I are there, and he's ripping this one board off, and as he yanks it, I'm on the other side, and I said, "Stop, there's a woman's legs." And he's going, like, "What do you mean?" So he stands back. Well, it was this Coca-Cola billboard, and what he thought was the bottom half, so her legs were on it. But they had used, there were a few tobacco posters, and these Coca-Cola ones, they just turned face side in, plastered over, and called it a day. So there were a few...
The project we've got to restore those back to their original.
Do something with them. We held on to them. So.
But yeah, so we kept plugging away, got a coat of paint on the ceiling, and
good shape, eh?
It took work.
We wire brushed it and primed it all in it.
Put a coat on by hand, and then we had I&E spray painting come in and spray paint.
So it turned out pretty.
And this is what the space looks like today. So this is a store downtown Moose Jaw called Rings and Things.
Rings and Things is space, yeah.
No.
We were looking to redo or keep what floor there was, but in the end, the building initially had a central stairway going down to the basement, and the basement and upstairs were all retail, but that had been covered over. We found out there was actually a fire in the building at one point, so joists had been replaced. The floor was pretty patchy. There wasn't much we could do with the existing there.
We had laminate floor. So this took us about 6 months, I think, driving from Calgary every second weekend. So we'd leave Friday.
Saturday, mostly Sunday, and then we drive back home. Get here, go to work on Monday, build our energy back up over the next 2 weeks, and then turn around and do it all again. So
I mean, that whole process wasn't very green, but at the time I was driving a Toyota Echo, which was getting about 50 miles per gallon.
it wasn't very comfortable, but it was cheap on gas.
Cheap on gas, yeah. So.
And we, it's a 2-story building, so every weekend when we came out, I mean, we didn't have a lot of money, we couldn't afford a hotel, so we pitched a tent upstairs. And when you think of the time frame we were doing this, it was essentially September through till January. So November and December, we were sleeping upstairs without heat. But we're learning how, a building sandwiched between 2 existing 2-story buildings and with the main floor that's heated, we made it through all right. So
then after the renovation process, in 2008, we got married.
We survived. We made it through the ordeal. Got to give Troy a lot of credit working with my parents on it as well. It was an interesting go. So
I think I was almost set up at some points, but made it through that. And then in September of 2009, this little guy came into our lives. And at that point, we were living in Calgary thinking, well, is this the place that we want to bring our little guy up? Like I said, we had a little, a house in the suburbs. We were commuting every day and just didn't have much time for ourselves. And being that we were in Moose Jaw every second week, we thought, oh, Moose Jaw is a pretty neat little place. And I had ties here. And so we thought, hey, well, Raylan was still on maternity leave, so we thought, well, give it a shot.
Let's do it.
Packed up the house, got a U-Haul, came to Moose Jaw. So when we got here, like I said, Raylan was still on mat leave, and I was just starting to try to get my business up and going. So we initially went back upstairs and started looking, okay, well, we can't jump on this right away. This was in May, but we started planning for when can we do the upstairs, and our goal was to turn it into an office for ourselves. So this was one of the offices, so obviously there is a lot of damage, like I say, a lot of rain damage on the ceiling.
The roof had leaked, so we had buckets sitting up there. We didn't know exactly where it was leaking. It was a bit of a chasing.
Stuff all over the place. The flooring obviously was in almost original, I'd say. Probably put in the 30s or 40s, marmoleum floor, which needed to be replaced. All the plaster and everything needed to come down.
The gray, there was a vinyl wall covering on the walls, but behind it the plaster had all came off the lathe, so it was sagging and bulging, and you could knock it, like it was coming apart.
The windows, really, really bad shape, so we weren't quite sure what we were going to do with the windows.
Sash cords were cut, so if you open them, they weren't staying open. Mechanics
I think most of them were
just
nailed shut, I think.
Yeah.
So, you want to talk about a low-flow toilet, there's a no-flow toilet. And, we debated if we could salvage that or not, but in the end we decided to opt for a new dual flush unit. Here's a picture of another space.
Our
There's
tent
where we
in
lived
there.
for the weekends for 6 months. That was our retreat in Moose Jaw.
Not quite the spa, but...
Not quite the spa, yeah. There's another room, all sorts of peeling paint and
Wallpaper, layers of wallpaper.
an original skylight that had been roofed over probably about 20 years ago, I'm guessing. But this was the original, the way they lit the central area of the building. So we thought, well, maybe we can, come up with some ideas what to do with that. So then I think it was around August that we got up and started ripping things apart. And it was interesting. I mean, we didn't have the opportunity to put a big bin in front, so essentially what
Because
we did
we were doing it evenings and weekends, we couldn't really justify taking a parking stall out front for that time. And out the back of the buildings, there's some outbuildings, so we couldn't get a chute far enough to shoot beyond it. So we invested in a few heavy-duty Rubbermaid totes, and we toted them up and down those stairs. If they ever needed an endorsement, we'd be...
spokespeople were it, because those totes
They
did
took a look into
a lot up and down those stairs with a lot of material in them. So when we started chipping some plaster off the sidewalls, which we did like we did on the main floor, we started uncovering something that looked a little strange, and that's what we ended up with on one of the walls.
As we said, basically there's two buildings on one on either side of us. Those buildings were there first. When our building came, we found papers from the city where the owner purchased half of the wall from the one side. I'm not sure about the other, but basically our floor joists, they notched in the existing brick walls. We have no supports underneath. It's a clear span building to building. It was a little iffy, but it's still standing. And yes, these were the murals on the existing buildings that we uncovered.
Now, unfortunately, this part here you can kind of see was they stripped all the plaster off and wallpaper right over top of that. So in the end, unfortunately, like after we chipped all the plaster off the brick, we had a light sandblasting done. So unfortunately, we lost that part of the mural just because we couldn't salvage it. But we did keep it in the front part in this office here.
What did the lettering say?
Oh,
well, I'll show you a better picture.
actually, yeah, there's some pictures when it's completely gone.
So once again, trying to get, there's our totes down here, so those went up and down the stairs probably a couple hundred times. Tried to salvage as much material as we could. Any of the woodwork, actually we'll run through that at the end here. So there's the brick walls. This is getting kind
We
of
had
further
to
along.
drape them all, so when we sprayed the ceiling, the overspray didn't ruin our job on that. But with the sandblasting, we had to do that first so we could get the dust out. So it was a lot of back and forth on some of this.
Stuff. So we tried to salvage as much as the original millwork as we could. The casings and baseboards and stuff.
Basically took it all off, cleaned it up, painted it up, and then after we re-drywalled, then we reinstalled. I think we had 2 out of the 5 rooms that had to get new.
Being 100 years old, it didn't come off all that easily, so unfortunately we lost some of it, but tried to keep as much as we can. So there's some drywall going back on. We had to add on a little kitchen, which wasn't there originally. Put a coat of paint on the windows. Raylan spent many hours, and we restored all the windows back to their original working condition. Stained the floors, so what we did is we tore up all that marmoleum, had all the floors sanded down.
They were a combination. Some floors were painted, some were decently good already, but it was just a mishmash through the space.
So we're getting kind of closer anyway, so that's after a coat of Varathane on the floors. The skylight, what we did is we ended up insulating it, and we lit it up to create kind of a neat feature in that room, and actually it turned out really nice. We actually did go with 2 levels of lighting and ran some rope lights through it, and that didn't work out as well as we were hoping it would, but we could go back and add more rope lights if we wanted to. All the original door hardware we were able to salvage, and Raylan was able to work on that and bring it back to life.
Prior to the cleaning. If you ever have to clean paint off old hardware, door, window hardware, boil it in a pot of TSP and water, You let it soak, and then you just pick it out, and the paint just falls right off. So you don't have to scrub, you don't scratch. It actually worked out pretty well for a lot.
Yeah, I think you got to be careful though, just as a disclaimer with
Oh.
if you're working with potential lead paint or something like
Yeah,
that, you might
just
want to not stand close to that pot when it's boiling. So. Our new dual flush toilet, a bit of an improvement from what we had before. We had a new white PVC roof installed. This was more in the summertime. So from what we've been told, these roofs should lower the temperature inside our building by about 10% or so. And these are some pictures of what it looks like today. So this is a little kitchenette that we added. And essentially the way the building's set up is that we're running out of the front 2 offices that overlook Main Street. And then there's 3 other offices that we're currently leasing out right now. This is our office, right inside of the office. So the mural ended up reading Somerville's Mexican, well, the whole thing read Mexican fruit chewing gum. And then it said, a benefit, not a habit.
Yeah. So we figure if our building was built in 1908, that would have been a 1907 type thing.
Another shot of that. So yeah, we'll go through some of the features that we did. My office, I had a mural on my wall as well. Mine is for McClary's Kootenai steel range furnaces.
Steel ranges, yeah.
So,
and then it had the, what was it, KS Sunshine Agents, and or K Smith Sunshine Agents, and a contact there. The attic space is about 3 feet high in spaces, and there was another mural we saw up there for a heating and plumbing company, but we can't read the full name because it's where our roof ties into the other building.
This is the boardroom. So once again, just finished up. Sprayed the ceiling once again. Sprayed all. We had a new furnace, a new ductwork put in. Sprayed it all to match. And so this is where we felt that during construction, some of the green things that we did, we salvaged the millwork, doors, moldings, hardware, wherever we could. Salvaged lumber from demolition for reuse. There was one wall we took out, and we salvaged the lumber to build our other walls. We restored the original metal ceiling, original wood floors, and some of the glass that was in there. Raylan, like I say, restored all the original windows back to working condition. Some of the new green features we put in, we put a dual flush toilet in, all Energy Star appliances, 95% high efficiency furnace, an HRV. We don't have air conditioning, I put yet in brackets. Last year we had a girl, Tricia, working for us, and she's on maternity leave, and so she was expecting throughout the summer, and I think a couple days almost killed her. But,
It's a little
so
warmer
we're still debating on that. The new white PVC roof, low VOC paints for the most part, and high efficiency lighting. Where we could improve, when we did the ceiling, because it was metal, we had to use, we could have spent some time researching other products, but because our partners own a hardware store in Hannah have access to it, we used oil-based paint. For the ceiling, we used oil-based Varathane for the floors, just because of the longevity. Once again, we could have spent some time and researched other products that could have been comparable. Could have reused the existing radiator heat system. We actually had all the original radiators up there.
Basically, the radiator, there's a boiler in the basement that serves the main floor and has been working great. The upstairs radiators had all been removed, capped, and sitting just beside the lines, but everything's been working so well for the main floor on their system. We had a couple of people look at it, and it was like, well, it might do the upstairs, it might not, and
at the end of the day, we would have needed some sort of ventilation system upstairs anyway, so we thought, well, we'll just put a new 4-star furnace in. Once again, high efficiency. We could have better attempted to recycle demolition materials. We could have contacted Sarah maybe, and she could have helped us, all the plaster and lathe we took out of there perhaps could have been recycled for another use. So there were definitely things that we could have done. Could have been a little bit greener with it. So I guess coming to Moose Jaw, and the way that we're kind of looking at it too, is it was a green lifestyle change. In Calgary, we lived in the suburbs, and we used to drive to work and home every day. We'd kind of go down a hill, over a bridge, and then up a hill. And as we're going down the hill, we'd look at our subdivision, and all you would see is black asphalt. No green, no nothing, just asphalt, shingles. That's all you saw. Now, when you come across the 9th Avenue Bridge or something like that, and you look at Moose Jaw, you can see the church and you see green. So we absolutely love that. We came from a street that was, no greenery, no nothing, to a street where we've got beautiful tree canopies. I think for the first week we were in Moose Jaw, we just every morning sat out and drank coffee out there for an hour.
We could hear birds. We didn't have birds there. There was nowhere for them to live. And you start to appreciate some of these sounds a little more than we had. And
our 30-minute commute to the office every day literally turned to a 20-minute walk in the park. So from our home, now we should put a disclaimer by that. Unfortunately, we have to take our little guy to daycare, and so most days we drive, but down the road, we'll be planning to walk to work every day, and
we've got the option
right
here
through the park instead of having to deal with this for 30 minutes a day. In Calgary, we worked at SAIT in a circa 1960s office building. Our office was renovated not too long ago, but it still had an old air handling system. We weren't allowed to open the windows because it would throw off the air handling system. All sorts of different things like that. So now we're in a renovated character downtown office in Moose Jaw. We love being downtown. We love being able to go grab a coffee and all those kind of things. We have operable windows now, so we're allowed to open the windows when we want some fresh air. So why would we build and live green? And this is a picture of our son looking out the window here. And we do it for him. We did this renovation. We're hoping maybe someday he'll have the opportunity to have an office in this building. We're hoping we can pass it on to him someday. And once again, I'm going to say we're not perfect. We could be living greener. The one thing I look at this and I think it's kind of a neat shot, him looking out the window, looking into the future, and then I see his disposable diaper there. So I'm not gonna, like I say, we're not perfect. We're working on it. We did have
we did do cloth for his first year, and then daycares and things.
And a two-year-old's diaper.
Come on.
We're working on it.
When you get older.
Did you read the tip of the week last week?
I did. On the next one, we'll try harder.
Okay. So, thank you very much. To talk about a little bit about our business, maybe we'll just take a minute and say, we run a design firm here in Moose Jaw. I'd love to say that people were beating down our doors to design green homes for them, but it's just not the case right now. So, unfortunately, I can't really comment on all the green projects we're doing because they're not there. But sessions like this and what we're doing here over these next 2 days are going to create that. So we're very happy to be a part of this. And to a point where tomorrow we'll be presenting a project. We wanted to design a green building, so we designed one. And we're going to try and build it. So tomorrow we're going to present that design too.
That's at
3
o'clock. Yeah. So that's it. Does anyone have any questions on it?
Any questions? Can I come hang out in your office tomorrow?
Sure.
So I was just wondering though, as you see Saskatchewan booming and not necessarily to the magnitude of Calgary, but you see neighborhood design where there is a lot of asphalt and rooftops and not a lot of yard space and smaller lots. What do you see Moose Jaw being able to do with regards to ensuring that there is sustainable design in our future?
We'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow as well.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, to comment on that, I mean, we definitely have a lot of improvements to do. And I think Saskatchewan, we're in a very unique position too, because we can look to Alberta and see what they did through their boom time and say, hey, this worked, hey, this didn't work. So I'm really hoping they're going to look at that aspect of it, of the boom, and say that didn't work, let's try something different. Because our community in Calgary, I mean, like I say, it was in the suburbs. And to be honest, if we didn't have to leave our community, we might have stayed there. We really enjoyed it. It was kind of a new urbanism style community where there was kind of a central shopping area, and the houses kind of fanned out from there. So, you know, we used to walk to the store, and there were parks and everything like that around. So it was a nice community. So I'm hoping that, you know, we can look at some of those features and bring them over here.
Good.